Hi, I'm Anna Milan from the Community Services Department. Today we're discussing Chatham's North Beach and North Beach Island with Fire Chief Justin Tavano. Chatham's North Beach is a current formation of the barrier beach that has protected Chatham Harbor and the mainland from the open ocean for many years. Over the years, weather events and erosion have created many changes in the area. The current North Beach is attached to Nauset Beach to the north and is accessible by oversand vehicles or by boat. To the south of North Beach is North Beach Island. It is flanked by the north and south inlets and is accessible only by boat. These two areas are part of the Cape Cod National Seashore and are extremely fragile and dynamic natural areas. They are a valuable resource to the boating public, property owners, and wildlife. In addition to providing storm protection to Chatham, they are also very popular recreation areas. Chatham's North Beach and North Beach Island are protected by federal, state, and town regulations. Oversight of these areas is provided by the town of Chatham. Hi, Chief, how are you?
I'm well, how are you?
I'm great. Thank you for being here with
Absolutely.
us.
Thanks for having me.
How are things in the fire department?
Things are going well. Busy summer.
Good.
You know,
Yeah.
everything summer related has been happening.
Yeah,
So
have you guys been enjoying your front row seat to the A's? They've had an okay season this year.
We did. They got knocked out recently.
I
Tough
know,
game
by,
the other night.
by
But
Harwich,
Yeah.
sad, but. Well, I'm excited to talk to you. Labor Day weekend is always crazy, and as we get closer, I think it's important that we have these conversations. Are you guys expecting a busy weekend?
yeah, we always do. I mean, summer's so busy anyway, but especially the summer holiday weekends and what seem like holiday weeks now
Yes.
are, we just see, the influx of people just brings an influx of challenges and
For sure.
different types of emergencies. So.
Yeah. What are some of the most common personal safety hazards that people need to be aware of when they're, visiting the Cape, but also when they're here on the busiest weekends?
Yeah, so I think it pertains to the same stuff we see throughout the warm weather months throughout the summer, but it's kind of accelerated and exacerbated on those holiday weeks and weekends. Swimming emergencies, water-related emergencies. I know, Jason Holm will probably speak about the boating-related emergencies, but water-related emergencies, heat exposure, heat-related emergencies like heat exhaustion and heat stroke. Especially on the holiday weekends, people tend to celebrate. So one of our concerns is excessive or not celebrating responsibly.
Sure.
With
Over-imbibing,
drug use, things like that. Not operating cars safely, not operating boats safely. But just the other general safety concerns with kind of excessive celebration.
for sure.
And then, lastly, kind of increased prevalence of fires, bonfires, campfires, and fireworks.
Yeah, absolutely. Can you talk a little bit about the existing rules around fireworks? I think it's always important to remind everyone that in Massachusetts, they're not legal, correct?
Correct. In Massachusetts, fireworks are illegal to possess, sell, or use without the appropriate permits and certifications. So, we always encourage people to just leave those fireworks shows to professionals. It's not just the personal injuries that we worry about with setting off fireworks. Obviously, that's a huge concern, but in the summer months, it tends to be drier out, so we worry about, the fire risk associated with fireworks as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially, when there's fires going on in California, we're seeing it's something we'd like to avoid. So can you also kind of explain the importance of sun protection and hydration when we're spending a lot of times outdoors and in the sun, and why we need to keep up with that?
Sure, yeah, especially as we get into like September, you start to feel those cooler mornings and cooler nights. So people can kind of be tricked into thinking it's a little bit cooler. They don't have to worry about the heat as much.
Yeah.
But the sun is just as intense during the day. So if people are planning on long beach days, especially in remote locations, make sure that you bring, whether it's a pop-up tent or some way to get out of the sun for a little bit. Obviously going out in the water to cool down. Quick dips in the water can help cool your core temperature. Stay hydrated. Throughout all the summer months, we run into it all the time with people experiencing heat exhaustion and heat stroke, and dehydration. Those are kind of the big three.
Sure. And I'm glad you mentioned remote areas. The first thing that comes to mind when talking about a remote space would be North Beach Island, or the over sand beaches that technically is Chatham. When dealing with an emergency out there, that must be pretty difficult to try and address. Would you say so? And I'm sure you're working really closely with the harbor master and Coast Guard. But when people are visiting those remote locations, what are some things that they need to keep in mind?
Yeah, so I think first and foremost, communicate your plans with loved ones, family members back on the mainland. Let them know where you're planning on heading to. Understand that as you get out to some of those remote locations, the cell service can be spotty. I always, as a tip, encourage people when they're somewhere, especially if it's an unfamiliar place, you can pull up your map on your phone, take a screenshot of it, and share it with people back home. So if your phone dies, or if you don't have great service and they can't get a hold of you, at least they kind of have a last known location that you were at.
Yeah.
If you don't come back when you were supposed to be back.
Sure.
But yeah, communicating your plans with people, being familiar with where you're going before you get there, especially if you're going to be out there for a long day. Coming back at night, it can be disorienting. So just really understanding your whereabouts.
Sure. That's great advice. What regulations are in place or should people be aware of regarding fires on the beaches? Because I know that can also kind of turn into a sticky situation if maybe they're not properly disposed of. What are the rules in place to make sure that everyone stays safe?
Yeah, so we get questions like this every day in the summer. People coming from out of state, where there's different rules and regulations. But in Massachusetts, the Massachusetts fire prevention regulations and environmental regulations, they don't allow open fires on the beach, on public beaches. So fires, according to the regulations, are limited to cook fires. So fires for the purpose of cooking only.
Yes.
So that would be charcoal grills and gas grills.
Okay.
Fire pits, bonfires, they're not permissible on public beaches.
And were someone to move forward against regular rules, what could the consequences be of?
So there are, according to Mass General Law, we have the authority to fine people for having those fires, as well as charge them reimbursement expenses for any fire department responses and extinguishment.
Sure, great. So we've kind of talked about safety in remote areas, but if someone's choosing to stick closer to the mainland, what are some things that they should keep in mind during the holiday weekend?
Yeah, just be aware of the weather patterns. Here in Chatham, things can shift quickly. Wind directions can shift quickly. Wind intensity, the fog can roll in the blink of an eye. We are in hurricane season. Not that a hurricane's going to pop up out of nowhere, but thunderstorms do. Lightning can pop up with those thunderstorms quickly and unexpectedly. But even a storm, the remnants of a storm that's several miles offshore, can wreak havoc on our shoreline and our waterways in the form of riptides and stuff like that. So just being really aware of the forecast and the weather patterns, the water temperature, even this time of year, even though it's been heated up with the sun all summer, on those outer beaches can be in the low 60s, mid 60s this time of year. So prolonged exposure to the water. We worry about things like hypothermia. Use the buddy system when you're going in the water to swim, especially on unprotected beaches that don't have lifeguards. Let people know when and where you're going into the water, so they can kind of keep an eye on you. And just don't spend too much time out there because the water is cold.
The water is cold. I can attest. It's definitely freezing. When people are traveling out to North Beach or onto the Oversand or really anywhere, but specifically in remote places, what are some things that you would suggest beachgoers bring with them to make sure that they're safe, that they're able to communicate, with whomever they choose? What are some things that you'd want them to have? Yeah,
so I'll just touch on kind of some of the associated with some of the risks I mentioned. So, if you have pop-up tents or shade structures you can bring with you, that's going to give you some relief from the sun. Bring plenty of hydration, plenty of water, things like Gatorade that has electrolytes in it.
Sure.
Make sure you have communication devices charged. Consider bringing like a portable charger to make sure you can recharge your phone while you're out there. And yeah, and again, just kind of communicate your plans in advance.
Great. So just to recap, what are the 3 takeaways that you'd want the public to keep in mind if they're deciding to celebrate their weekend out on the island?
I'd say, use the water safely, swim safely, celebrate safely and responsibly, communicate your plans again to people who aren't with you. And just a bonus one I'll throw in there is just to make sure that you understand how to access emergency services if you need it.
Great.
And just don't hesitate to call if for help if you're on the fence about whether you're having an emergency or somebody that you're observing you think might be in a little bit of trouble. We'd always rather that you call us, call 911 for help. We'd rather be called and not needed than needed and not called.
Absolutely. Great. Well, thank you so much.
All
Have
right.
a great day.
Thank you. You
Thanks.
too. Bye.